Next month will mark the second anniversary of Russia invading Ukraine, and we finally start seeing Russia falling apart as the direct result of that action. Vladimir Putin calls this freezing breakthrough or breakout.
А нам нужно осуществить, я говорил об этом не случайно в послании, прорыв.
Это порыв. С другой стороны, где он? Вода прям хлещет.
Ну, говорил о необходимости прорыва. Прорыв в будущее.
Короче, все оттуда.
Если мы не сделаем этот прорыв, в этом вся суть. Я уже говорил об этом много раз, хочу повторить. Нам нужен прорыв.
Коротко ситуация.
Нужно добиться прорыва, именно прорыва. Нам необходим настоящий прорыв.
Замерзаем! Замерзаем!
Прорыв.
I call it the payback. The time has come. Russia starts falling apart, literally. Right now, in January of 2024, we're seeing that everything in the country starts breaking down. Whose fault? If you watch Russian propaganda, the answer is easy. The evil Satanists, of course. Their president himself secretly came to Russia and disrupted Russian utilities. Sabotage, of course. Jokes aside, two most visible industries with big troubles, with breakdowns everywhere that Russian state and the propaganda cannot hide, are the aviation industry and housing and communal services. In other words, the utilities. I will speak of the aviation industry in the next video that'll be released on January 20th. And today I will show you how Russians are literally freezing this winter and explain why these troubles with utilities are only the beginning. Well, before I show you these troubles, let me explain how Russian utilities industry works. 65% of Russians live in apartments, in large apartment blocks, most of which were built in the days of the USSR, just like this one. By the way, this is the apartment block in the city of Rostov, where I was growing up around 40 years ago. 31% of Russians live in private houses, mostly in rural areas, in small towns and villages, something like this. And 4% live in dormitories. I will talk of the apartment blocks today because all of them have utilities connected, and the utilities include cold and hot water, central heating, sewage and trash removal. The utilities are provided by state-owned enterprises in most places. Only on very rare occasions, utility provider is a private company. The government officials love controlling the utilities. It's where they can steal the most and do it covertly. On January 27th, I'll release another video breaking down how Russian officials steal taxpayers' money in the utilities industry. Please tune in. The private houses in the villages are a completely different story. House owners are basically on their own. No water main supply, outhouses with cesspools underneath, no gas, you get the idea. The best a house can get is natural gas supply. In such case, heating is not a problem. Homeowners usually install boilers if they have natural gas. A little over 60% of Russian private houses are gasified, and about 40% of private houses use coal and firewood to get through long Russian winters. In general, homeowners are on their own and none of government concern whatsoever. The apartment owners are a different story because when something goes wrong with utilities, the apartment owners are stuck. They have no alternatives. They must toughen it out. The apartment owners depend 100% on government-provided utilities, and they pay pretty penny for the utilities. By the way, if you like today's video, please help me spread it by making reposts of this in your social media accounts. And for the first time, I'm asking something else. Please leave a comment. If you have nothing to say, leave something nice, perhaps words of encouragement. I would love that. Thank you. And now, literally a few words on how heating of Russian apartments works. Heating in Russia is centralized for the apartment blocks and is very different from the rest of the world. There are huge power plants, usually outside large cities and towns, sometimes within city limits, and on territories of large industrial factories, the remnants of the USSR. Such power plants produce electricity that is supplied to all apartments, which is a normal practice used all over the world. They also produce heat that is also supplied, physically transported to radiators placed in the apartments. That's a system that only can be found in Russia and perhaps in some Eastern European cities that were modeled after the Soviet cities. The reason this system is not common in the world is because it's highly ineffective. The losses of heat transported for miles through outdoor heat supply systems, pipelines from power plants to apartments, the losses are tremendous. The USSR didn't care about the losses because it had abundant cheap resources, natural gas that fires industrial boilers and turbines producing heat and steam. That's basically how power, electricity and heat supply in large cities look like. Let's move to what's happening now, in winter of 2024. We're having second winter after Russia invaded Ukraine. That decision to invade changed Russia forever. The country is basically over. But for many changes, it has taken some time to take effect, and we finally start seeing many results now. I'd like to show you what the results of the war in the utility industry are.
Приехали на котельную патронного завода. Трубы отогреваются, сосульки под насосами. О, это я дышу, блин. Встало 3 котла. Вот они котлы. Офигеть, блин. Офигеть, котел нагревают, блин. Он еще и течет. Воду греет вот таким вот способом, да, пушкой на насос. На остальной котельной температура 0, в очке котельной отогреваем пушкой насосы, чтоб не замерзла в них вода, не разорвало.
Квартира по 13-14 градусов. У нас дети, старики. Помогите, пожалуйста. Мы
Вот так. Весь двор уже затопило. В подъезд не зайти никак.
Дома находятся без отопления. В квартирах от 8 до 16 градусов тепла в разных домах. Нормативная температура не соответствует должной. Город Электросталь, восточная сторона. Находимся без отопления с самого начала отопительного сезона. В квартирах от 10 до 18 градусов тепла в разных домах. Электросталь замерзает, а пользуемся отопительными приборами всевозможными. в домах находиться невозможно. Замерзаем!
Замерзаем! Замерзаем!
Ну вот расцвело, картина более прояснилась, смотрится, что можно делать. Где что копать теперь будет, вообще непонятно. Вот эти бедные машины, это вообще просто ужас. Вот как они теперь будут оттуда выцарапываться, вообще непонятно. Ладно, там какая повыше, а вон те вообще все встали. Ну, вот как...
Никаких действий не предпринимается. Что хоть нам делать? Кто нам поможет? Вот, перебывается человек, чтобы пройти в магазин. Даже хлеба нет. Сидим тут, как на острове, на необитаемом. И всю зиму так. Вот наш мост. Сейчас хоть немножечко освободился. Был затоплен полностью.
Причем фонари горят, удивительно, а в домах нет ни отопления, ни воды, ни света. Кошмар какой-то. Минус 27. Нормально, нет?
Вообще не понимаю, они берут снегом, весь мусор сгребают, ему кидают в ковш, он высыпает в одну кучу, засыпает снегом всю помойку. Убрать мусор не пробовали. Чтобы в машину мусор сгружать, а не просто засыпать снегом. Это что за приколы? Смотрите, что делают.
Breakdowns at the power plants, breakdowns at the boilers, heat transport pipelines bursting, water main bursting, no proper garbage removal for weeks, covering up trash with fresh snow instead of removing it is a know-how of Russian government. The goal is probably to make it more visually pleasing and to reduce stink for the local residents. And it's not just the emergencies happening here and there due to abnormally cold weather. No, Russia is having a normal winter. You know, Russia has real winters with very low temperatures. The problems with the utilities are all over the country, literally all over. Here's the map. More regions in the country are added to this map every single day. By the way, this has never happened in Russia before. In the USSR, yes, it was quite common. In Russia, no, especially in the large cities, let alone Moscow and Moscow province. Moscow's utility system was always a showcase for the country, always worked like a Swiss watch. And now, all at once, it has started breaking down. It's definitely not a coincidence. What are the reasons for this catastrophe? What are the reasons for people freezing? There are three major reasons: money, people, and hardware. First reason is inadequate financing. Every year, there was so much money spent to subsidize and support the utilities industry. As we all know, Russia stole 4 Ukrainian provinces in 2022 and vouched to restore them, raised everything first, then promised to restore. The utility infrastructure, power plants, pipelines, etc., there are absolutely same as in Russia. It used to be the same country after all, with unified utility infrastructure system and standards. So, Russian government obliged different Russian cities and provinces to restore some parts of stolen Ukrainian territories at their own expense, for their own budgets. Imagine you have an amount of money to spend each year to maintain utilities in your city, the pipelines, the power plants, etc. Then they come and tell you, now you must rebuild and maintain your utility infrastructure, and on top of that, a city in Ukraine, like Mariupol. And that's a real case, by the way. Mariupol is being rebuilt and maintained at the expense of the budget of the city of St. Petersburg, Russia, by the city's budget, by the taxpayers' money. So you simply take a chunk of money from your budget and give it to someone else, and you spend less that amount on your own city. And when you under budget, when you cut regular maintenance, this is what happens. What Vladimir Putin calls breakthrough or breakout. So there's no coincidence, no magic, no bad luck in Russia this winter. The Russians are freezing as a direct result of the war that Russia is waging on Ukraine. Reason number 2, lack of people. This is so easy to explain. Guess employees of what enterprises were hit the hardest by the mobilization that's been going on in Russia since September of 2022. Yes, the state-owned enterprises. They were simply ordered to provide certain number of employees to get mobilized. I witnessed that. And the utilities were hit the hardest among all state-owned enterprises. Many utilities workers were mobilized and sent to the front lines to kill as many Ukrainians. But some were more fortunate and sent to the occupied cities to work on the utilities infrastructure. And when you have the lack of people who work in the utilities industry, this is what you get, the breakthrough. And number 3 is lack of technologies and hardware available. In the last 30 years, a great deal was done in upgrading power generation, transmission, and distribution facilities. My company alone constructed close to 100 high-voltage substations all over Russia and commenced over 2 gigawatts of electrical output. Guess what equipment we used? That's right. Modern, cost-efficient, and effective. That's right. Not Russian. For transmission and distribution of electrical energy, the equipment of 3 major manufacturers was used. They were French Alstom-Areva, German Siemens, and German ABB. Also, there was a Ukrainian power transformer manufacturer called Zaporozhsky Zavod Transformatorov, supplied power transformers to Russia that did not produce power transformers in Russia, For power generation, there were 2 major manufacturers of equipment, German Siemens and American General Electric. My company even designed a plant that GE built in Russia to manufacture its turbines back in 2013. Right before the war, in the late 2021, right before the new year, we signed another contract to design stage 2 of the same plant. the expansion. That didn't age well. Japanese Mitsubishi and some minor Chinese manufacturers were trying for a decade or so to break into Russian market, but they couldn't do that. My company supplied the equipment manufactured by Siemens. I was the executive responsible for cooperation with Siemens, so I know a thing or two about Siemens, and I know what I'm talking about quite well. And Russian manufacturers? Only 2 small ones for the entire country with outdated Soviet technology and very expensive and highly inefficient equipment. If you're asking, well, what happens now when all foreign manufacturers left Russia? You are asking the right question. The answer is a disaster. A disaster happens. The engineers of foreign manufacturers aren't available in Russia any longer. Maintenance service of highly sensitive technological equipment isn't available any longer, and spare parts aren't available directly from the manufacturers any longer. When all that happens, this is what happens. If at this point you're asking yourself, how can I help this channel? That's easy. The best way is to hit the like button, to buy me a tea or a coffee at buymeacoffee.com, or become channel's patron at patreon.com. Either way would be fantastic and much appreciated. The links are down below. Thank you so much. So what's now? Will Russians freeze to death this winter? Probably not. The state still has plenty of resources to patch up holes. Take this for example. You can dig up the pipeline and patch up the breakout. And this is exactly what they're doing this winter, patching up holes in the emergency mode. But it'll be just a temporary solution. The entire utility system needs to be renovated and upgraded. It needs to be maintained properly. And for that, there's no money. There are no people and there's no technology and equipment. Meaning that we'll be seeing many more disasters happening in Russia's utility industry. What we're seeing right now is just the beginning. Winter of 2024 is just the beginning. And if the beginning is terrible, imagine what will follow. Just like Putin wanted. Breakout will happen at every corner, literally. And speaking of Putin, ladies and gentlemen, we're seeing now that everything is going according to Putin's plan. Only the plan clearly benefits another country, making it easier for the takeover at Russian taxpayers' expense. Do you know what country is that? Please let me know in the comments. Meanwhile, I suggest you watch another video I made documenting how I was leaving Russia forever.